Welcome everybody on behalf of EVPA to our workshop today. It's the module 3. And today the workshop is about impact measurement, impact measurement and management. So briefly for the agenda of today, you received the detailed agenda here, just a short recap. So there was a short preparation phase in the past weeks where we shared some materials with you to prepare a little bit the session today. And today, after this welcome now, we'll have a short introduction into venture philanthropy and impact investing, followed then by an introduction on our core topic, impact measurement and management. We'll then have a short break for about 10 minutes. And after the break, we'll dive into a practical workshop on the theory of change. We prepared breakout groups for you with mural, etc. So it will be your time to work yourself. And then to close the session, we will have a best practice example from a Portuguese member organization called MAISE with Angela Silva. She will present and show us how their impact measurement and management system is implemented actually on the ground in real life. So we see also how it works. And then we're going to close with some wrap up and some final considerations. So this is the agenda for today. You already saw us, the team from EVPA, my colleague Sarah and Andrea. They will be with me here today, and we'll do this session together. We'll be the moderators and speakers of the session. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us via the chat. So if you have any technical problems, we'll make sure we solve that. And then, as I said, Angela Silva from MAISE Impact from Portugal, she's the head of innovation there, will join us a bit later for the best practice example. The objective of this workshop today is really to have a practical understanding of impact measurement concepts, to understand what it means to set goals at the social purpose organization level and to monitor them, and to reflect also on the 2 levels of impact that we're going to present on the investors or business support organization side and on the SPO side, plus to have a better understanding of the importance of how to manage impact. And now I will briefly only tell you also something about EVPA. So EVPA is a community of organizations interested in or practicing venture philanthropy and social investment across Europe. We'll go into some terminology in a moment, but our members, we have about 290 members across Europe in more than 35 countries, mostly in Europe, some also outside of Europe. And these members include a very wide range of impact actors that you see on the bottom left here, for example, venture philanthropy funds, social investors, grant-making foundation, impact funds, but also academia or banks, business schools, etc. And together with this community across Europe, EVPA would like to increase funding and expertise in the ecosystem, to increase the effectiveness of venture philanthropists and social investors, and also to co-create a well-functioning ecosystem. And our theory of change, we are going into the concept of theory of change also in a moment, is that we really envision a world where every social purpose organization is matched with the appropriate amount and type of support from venture philanthropy or social investment organizations to achieve the greatest impact. So the impact is really at the core of our theory of change. All right. So let's dive a little bit more into what venture philanthropy and impact investing means. You see the definition here. So we define venture philanthropy as a high engagement and long-term approach whereby an investor for impact supports social purpose organization to maximize social impact. So you see here different terms. I can already disclose that social impact is really the most important one, but you also see the term here, investor for impact, for example. And I would like to show you on this spectrum here. This is the spectrum of capital, what investing for impact means and what investing with impact means, because these are 2 important differences. So you have here on the spectrum, on the very left, you have traditional grant making, and on the very right, you have traditional investing. And in between, you have different sections here. So if we look at this part here, at the so-called venture philanthropy approach, we see investing for impact. And there we see, if we move slightly to the right from traditional grant making to engaged grant making, so there is a little bit of a difference. So investing for impact, or investors for impact, they support social purpose organizations, for example, here in this sense, in this field, that will never be financially sustainable, or they support SPOs, social purpose organizations, that are potentially financially self-sustainable in the future, for example. So there we enter the engaged grant making stage, but also you see there is also a part called social investment. And there we move further to the right, and there we see that investors for impact support social purpose organizations with a proven financially sustainable business model. And this is really the venture philanthropy approach. This is what we call investing for impact. And there is also the other part, investing with impact. And there we move further to the right, and there again, investors with impact can support SPOs with a proven financial sustainable business model, or also traditional businesses with an intentional social impact. And here we are again at the term social impact, because really at the core for both investors for impact and for investors with impact, at the core is the social impact that is achieved through an investment at the different stages of an investment process as lined out here. The difference though with investing with impact, that investors with impact really also need some financial returns alongside the social impact. So both approaches are complementary. They have different focuses, but the social impact in both cases is really at the center. All right, and here, just to remind you, this is really the impact ecosystem we are talking about when we speak about venture philanthropy, investing for impact and investing with impact. This just very briefly, I would like to introduce you to this charter of investors for impact. These are 10 principles that really are, this charter was developed very recently. It was a collective effort with our colleagues here in Brussels from the Knowledge Center, together with our EVPA members. And these are really 10 guiding principles. We call it really the DNA of investors for impact. And you see already here, I will not go into all these 10 principles, but you already see that 3 of them here are highlighted. It's number 5, 6, and 7. So 5 is measuring and managing impact. This is what we're going to speak about today. And then you have number 6 is the extensive non-financial support that investors can provide. And then you have number 7 is the tailored financial support according to the needs and characteristics of social purpose organizations. So if you want to learn more, there is a link. We obviously will share this recording with the slides, and there you can browse through this charter. But for the sake of today, as our main topic is impact measurement and management, we're going to look into this now a little bit deeper. So what does EVPA understand with impact measurement and management? You see here again a definition, and it says that impact measurement and management means measuring and monitoring the change created by organizations' activities, using this information and data to refine activities in order to increase positive outcomes, but also to reduce potential negative outcomes. We're going to a bit more detail in a few minutes, but have in mind really it's about increasing the positive outcomes and reducing potential negative outcomes, and to manage also this process accordingly. EVPA, in order to support investors, business support organizations, or investors for impact, with impact, for example, we developed a 5 steps approach, and you already had a reader in your preparation materials where these 5 steps are outlined. Just here as a short recap, these 5 steps are setting objectives. So what is the goal? What do I want to achieve? Then you have analyzing stakeholders as a second step. This really means who are the key players, who are the main actors in this process. Then you have the measurement of the results as a third step, verifying and valuing impact. And finally, the fifth step is monitoring and reporting. And you see here, it's a circle. It's not necessarily a linear process. That means it's a circle. You start after monitoring, reporting, You cannot restart this process, refine it. So it's really something ongoing. It's not a linear process, but a circular process. You had some readings already, and there was also a link in the readings to this report that appeared on the screen now. This is really an in-depth report as a practical guide on measuring and managing impact. This is really, if you want to dive deeper into this topic, we can really recommend to have a look at this report.
So we will go a little bit more in depth into the description of this 5-step process. But first of all, as I was telling you, this is a general framework, which means it's not a methodology. So you can follow this guiding principle and process, whatever methodology you use to measure impact. This framework comes from the practice. So as Florian was mentioning, we have a practitioner-based research that is really based on extensive research consultations with our members, with practitioners, and it's meant to be used by both support organizations, either investors or incubators, as well as by social purpose organizations. It's a learning process, so it's not linear. The idea is that you go from step 1 to step 5, and then you start the process all over again, because this is really a way to gather information, but then to improve and refine the way you manage your impact. It's a management tool. This is a very important concept that we would like you to become familiar with. So here, impact measurement, it's not collecting data for reporting purposes only, but it's especially collecting and understand data and impact to actually improve, refine, and also change the way we do things to improve and hopefully maximize the impact we can produce on society. All the 2 levels of impact, this is just the background that is behind the EVPA guide on impact measurement and management. Florian shared with you in the email a brief summary on these 5 steps. So I hope you had a look to that. So this is not totally new for you, but here we wanted to help your understanding of these 2 levels of impact, because it's probably one of the most difficult things to understand. So when we refer to impact measurement in this course, we really want to concentrate on the level of impact that the social purpose organization, so charity, social business, social impact-driven venture, they might have different names and different levels of social and impact return expected, but these social purpose organizations have a direct impact on final beneficiaries. And this is a module to discuss about impact measurement and management for social enterprises, so social purpose organizations in this definition. So we will work together in understanding the main concept and steps that we need to ensure to understand to support social enterprises in defining their social impact measurement system and how to manage that. But at the same time, our guides and also the speaker that we will have at the end of the session, so Angela Silva from MACE, will try to include also the perspective of the supporting organization, of the investor or the business support organization, because there is this double level of impact that you have as a supporting organizations on the social purpose organizations, that is an indirect level of impact on final beneficiaries. So we didn't want to overcomplicate this session now because we have only 3 hours, but you will find more on the EVPA guide. And we really hope that with Angela, we will manage to share some key messages on how it is important to ensure that you value your contribution towards the social enterprises you support, and you ask feedbacks from them on how they value your contribution. And at the same time, you have the right tools to support social enterprises then on the ground to really set up impact measurement systems that are ambitious and support them into their activities to achieve the greatest impact. Is this clear? This will be quick, but stop me if you have questions. So setting objectives, every framework starts with a definition of what are the overarching social goals that an organization would like to achieve. So usually starting from the definition of the social problem, you are probably familiar with problem trees, and this is really helpful for an organization to understand what are the proposed solutions to actually achieve a positive impact and solve that social problem. So social purpose organizations tend to have a solution that can actually solve a social problem. And just for you not to be lost into terminologies, every type of frameworks, balanced scorecards or logical frameworks, they all start with some sort of theory of change. This is why we wanted to dedicate some time today on the theory of change, because this is probably the most well-known instrument and tool that organizations use to define their own impact goals, and we will spend some time in that. So this setting objectives means defining a theory of change, which in the next slide we briefly explain. So what that means, the process. You first of all have to identify what are your beneficiaries or your main stakeholders. Then map backwards, so define what is the impact that you think that these beneficiaries should experience, and then map backwards what are the preconditions needed actually to make that impact become real, so make that change into people's lives happen. And so think about what are the activities that needs to be implemented in order to produce that change. And when we speak about change, we mean outcomes. So not just changes at the output level, which might be how many kids are trained in school, but at the outcome level. So what is the change in this kid's life as a consequence of that training session? And this is where impact comes when we reflect on the consequences of our actions. In the next slide, we have a typical impact value chain. So this is a logical framework that explains you where are the logical connections between the input, the activities, then to the outputs. So what are the tangible products as a result of the activities on the ground? So in that case, it's new schools built with how many places, or number of training delivered, number of kids enrolled in the school. These are numbers, and this is what usually organizations call KPIs. But we try to go a little bit further and to think about outcomes. So what is the consequence of these outputs? And we have here to include stakeholders groups, because we will only understand change when we refer to specific group of stakeholders. And here, when we think about outcome, then we have to think about the consequences. So not just how many students got a new, I don't know, certification, but how many actually found a job, or how many increased their self-confidence thanks to this, or how many changed their life as a consequence of this training. So these questions on the change start at the outcome level, and then there is this impact level, which at the moment I would not go too much into it because it's slightly more theoretical. The idea is that to understand what is your final impact, you have to adjust the outcomes by what is really your contribution, understanding the contribution of others, potentially on these positive or negative outcomes, but also what is the, I don't know, drop off on time. So we know that some effects might have a shorter time, other on a long time, but this is more a theoretical reflections that I wouldn't really go now. So keep in mind that to start to reflect about impact measurement, if you start to reflect at the outcome level, so at the change for people's lives, or if you want also for the environment, like many organizations have environmental objectives, we still include them into our definition of social objectives, but still think about the change. What is the effect of these activities? And then there is time then to start think about the impact. This is at that moment, I think, less important. So let's go ahead with analyzing stakeholders. Here, the main message is this is the key step to go forward when you define an impact measurement system, is to think who the activities have been affected to and who actually is affected by the activities. Stakeholder groups needs to be identified. So we have probably a huge number of stakeholders groups that are engaged at different levels with the activities, but then we have to make a choice. So impact measurement is really also a matter of proportionality. It depends on the purpose of the analysis, why you are doing that, what is the objective that really you want to achieve by measuring impact. And this will help you to clarify what are the stakeholders groups that you need to engage with, and really how to seriously engage with them. And this depends on your objectives. We can discuss this later on. Step 3, focusing on defining the indicators. So at that stage, you need to understand how to measure the impact you have. Defining indicators means define them at the output level, so numbers of activities, tangible products, but also at the outcome level. You can do this in many ways. You can use a repository of indicators existing online. There are many, or define your own indicators as a social purpose organization, for example. And this is an exercise that we will do today. So we'll give you a case, and then we will ask you to reflect on what are the outcome and outputs that can be identified into this case. So this will help you to understand what indicators mean in reality. Step 4, this is the definition of output and outcome, but I think we have already been there, so I would skip it. And step 4, verify and value impact. So this is where information should be verified, triangulated. This is the moment that before reporting, an impact measurement system should be somehow double-checked. So there is a moment where you should go back to stakeholders and ask them what is the value that they give to the impact you have somehow calculated. So is this important? How much important? Is this valuable? And in the feedback with stakeholders, there are always informations that really help you to understand if this was a positive or a not negative change, or what might be negative consequences of a positive change, for example. Step 5, this is reporting. That might be different stakeholder groups that need different reporting styles. So keep in mind that reporting is useful when it's really targeted to a specific group. And this is not really a complex conversation, so I wouldn't spend too much time on that. Yes, non-intended effects as well as non-intended negative effects, because sometimes we give for granted that impact is just a positive one, and this is sometimes a bias that projects have on beneficiaries, have to be included into an impact analysis for sure. And one of the assumptions is that these considerations should then inform decisions to actually change the way we do things, to then improve the way we do things, and sometimes also maybe dropping a project or dropping an idea. Sometimes we understand that maybe this project has a positive effect, but then we might concentrate our effort and resources on another one that actually create much value for people. And in the end, it's not just if this is valuable, but how much valuable, so that we can also compare how to invest our resources. So yes, this is absolutely to be included. I see a comment from Sandra. First of all, identify beneficiary groups. They might be more general, or they might be segmented groups of beneficiaries. So maybe women age from 35 to 40 with one kid that are single mothers in disadvantaged neighborhood is a good description of a stakeholder. Just saying single parent might be not enough. So defining stakeholders is very important. And then defining the change that stakeholder need to actually live according to your idea of, and to your theory of change. And then somehow defining indicators and checking with your stakeholder actually what is the feedback they give you on that project. And this is already a very valuable dimension. When you think about economic, this is somehow easier if you can ask people, because economic change can usually be monetized. And this is something that you can potentially do with impact measurement as well, but it's slightly more complex, but still you can get there. We have this long discussed this with our members. This is a recurrent question. Also, the other question is how not to burden the investee, the social purpose organization, with too many requests just for the sake of monitoring. But here the real fundamental point is that there needs to be their buy-in. They need to buy in the concept and understanding that this is part of a very valuable process for themselves to better manage their organization, to achieve better results, and also to increase their access to funding. And this is one of the main EVPA messages, that have a great impact measurement system will actually increase your fundraising and your revenue access. This is because this includes transparency, includes real reporting on impact, really gives a great message in terms of seriousness of the organization. Many social investors that are our members consider the maturity in the tier of change and the impact measurement system as one of the prerequisites to consider investing in an organization. So this is also a good somehow incentive. It's not the only one. So the other one is really understanding how to improve the way they do things. And then not to overburden. Sometimes organizations decide, for example, to support with capacity building, social purpose organization to support them in defining a system. They decide to support that with external consultants, or they agree. So indicators are not imposed by the investor or the accelerator, but there is a tailor-made process where there is an agreement on what are the milestones to be achieved by this organization to be considered successful, so that this, as exactly as you would do for financial indicators, you will consider as a measure of success, for example, from the impact perspective, that an organization for the first year develops a tier of change, for the second years defines its first outcome indicators and a baseline, and then starts to report maybe on year 3. This can be a pathway that you can negotiate and agree with a social purpose organization exactly as you would do on a financial level. The point is that there is no fixed cost. So for sure, you have to foresee a budget. This is not something that can come, I think, on top of the other activities. And it's very important to have the buy-in of the board, the CEO, the directors. So it's, I think, really important that this exercise is not just delegated to staff members. It needs to be seriously taken by the organization. And this is the only way to make it really valuable. So the CEO needs to be engaged into this process. Starting from there, everything we say about impact measurement is proportional. So proportional to the organization, the budget of the organization, the budget of the project, and the objectives of the analysis. If you need to do a control trial valuation to define if a big infrastructural project, for example, will affect the people of a certain neighborhood, you will need to invest much more money and to really be supported by universities in defining well-being scales, for example, to really engage with control groups so that you can demonstrate the scientific approach to that impact measurement analysis. For example, a small NGOs with 5 education projects in a regional dimension need much less to assess the impact of what they do. And maybe they can just do this with an Excel file and sending out a survey and collecting data year after year and having some qualitative interviews with some people without needing to go into this scientific dimension. So impact measurement comes across all that range of actually more subjective or objective way of doing things. And when you hear the learning journey of many organizations that have been working with us on impact measurement, they have come to understand what level of rigor they understand from the analysis, going on with their analysis year after year. So this is usually a refined process that you cannot start with all the knowledge from the beginning.
And a warm welcome to Angela Silva from Maze, from Portugal. She joins us today to share really her experience in the field. And now we had this first part, or first two parts of this workshop, really covering some theoretical inputs, giving you like the tools basically that are important in this field. And now with this example that we would like to present, or that Angela will present, here we really want to show you how all this can be applied in practice. This is one example that we're going to see. And I will not take any longer and any more time. I would like to again welcome Angela Silva. She's the head of innovation at Maze. Angela, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us and for taking the time. We are very much looking forward to your presentation to see how impact measurement and management is applied in practice, really on the ground, so to say.
Thank you so much for the invitation. And we were speaking about this opportunity internally at Maze. I'm going to speak with you a little bit about Maze and what we do, but it's really a moment for us to stop and think what we do and why we do it. So it's really always a great opportunity to reflect on the things we do. So thank you so much for that. I'll be sharing the slides with you, but by the end of all of this, I think that I can also share the slides. Are you seeing the full screen?
We see the presenter option, so we also see your notes.
Okay, let me check. Because my second screen is not working very well today. Let me check.
While Angela checked for her slides, I just wanted to add that Maze is one of the probably well-known EVPA members that work on an impact measurement system, and they have started with an accelerator, and now they also built a fund. So yes, now we see the slide, but you have to go into the presenter mode, into the slideshow mode.
Yeah, but duplicate. Can you see now?
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
Yeah, cool.
So, yeah, we are very happy to have you today with us because this is really a great example. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I cannot see everyone, but I wanted just to check if any one of you already know anything about Maze. Just a quick hands up. No, I'm quickly screening the faces. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit of our story. And so Maze is an impact investment firm. We were born in 2013 as an arm of for social investment of Gulbenkian Foundation here in Portugal. And in 2018, we finally spin off from Gulbenkian. Gulbenkian is still one of our main investors, but we basically focus ourselves in accelerating and investing in solutions that deliver impactful outcomes, and also in inspiring organizations to solve for social and environmental challenges. And we do it in 4 different ways. And some of them are products, some of them are areas of work. But first of all, we have a VC fund that only invests in impact startups. It's a 45 million euro VC fund in a joint venture with Mustard Seed from the UK. We also accelerate impact startups a little bit more early stage than the fund, and we help them scale and grow. And this is a non-financial support. And we also work with corporates on helping them achieve their impact metrics, and also on how to better measure the impact of what they do. And then finally, we work with the public sector on building and managing social impact bonds, and also on having like a branch that solves for social and environmental challenges through service design projects with public institutions and social organizations. And this is basically how we split internally about the work that we do. And we like to say that we are driven to prove that impact is really the greatest economic opportunity of our times. And when I was telling you that we had the opportunity to stop and think about this, was we try to split this into the types of stakeholders that we work with. So basically, to prove that impact is the greatest economic opportunity of our times, we do it in two fronts. We do it with our partners and investors, and we do it with the organizations and the startups that we work with. And with our partners and investors, they really want to do is because, as you are very aware, there's a movement in the market. It's their answer to the market. There are pressures from consumers, from stakeholders, shareholders, especially for the corporates that we work with. We see an increasing pressure on the shareholder structure on really matching performance with impact. And that's why they work with us. And we do it ourselves by measuring and managing all the impact that what we do, of everything that we do. And to report that to the partners and the investors that we work with is how it becomes useful for them. And with the startups and the organizations that we work with, they help us on our mission because they are actively contributing to a better society, but they are also looking for opportunities to improve the engagement with the communities that they are surrounded with, and also to access to investments that was not always available for them. And the way we do it is we influence them towards impact management. So we try to prove them the value of all of this, for them to have a stronger strategy and also to access to financial instruments that wouldn't be accessible if they wouldn't be focused on that. And I'm going to now go into detail for each one of these pillars. So focusing on us managing our impact to our partners and investors, one thing that it became very clear to us is that we really manage rather than measure the impact of what we do. And this is our strategy to be really proactive and forward-looking instead of just looking back and measuring whatever we've been building. It's also a very regular practice. It's ongoing. We have all the processes in place, and it's our way to really decrease the risk of our negative impact and the negative impact of the organizations that we work with. We don't follow any specific framework, but we've built our own frameworks based on our team's previous experience, impact management project guidelines, and also EVPA's charter for investors for impact. And it's really a combination of all of this together that makes our measurement and management instruments available to our partners and investors. And we do it regularly for everything that we do, but we split it into what is Maze as a whole. For example, if one of the things that I've attached to this presentation is our impact report from the last 7 years. So we've combined the last 7 years together because we thought it was a good milestone to report. But on an initiative and product basis, we do it very regularly. For example, for the accelerator, we do it every quarter. For the fund, we do with every investment that we make, and I'm going to speak about that in in a moment. And for example, for a specific project, we do it by the end of the project. So it's really up to the initiative and the product that we are running. Taking the example of the fund, I'm here showing you our impact process for the MSM fund. We have 3 different stages where we really combine impact with our investment. And this is, it's completely correlated, is what we call our lockstep model. And it's really it's our way to guarantee the compliance of everything that we do. So first of all, we define the impact case. We define why is this a good investment for us and why we want to proceed with it. Then we select the impact goal or the goals depending on the type of project, and prepare to manage the impact of the selected startups. And then finally, once an investment is made, we continuously learn and report the impact that is being created by them. And this is something that has been critical for the investors that are on board with us in our mission, and has been a differentiating factor from other funds that we've been in contact with. Looking at the second front that I was telling you about, so influencing towards impact management for organizations and startups, I think that I'm not going to tell you anything new, but I wanted to really reinforce this. It's really hard to convince the organizations and the startups that we work with about how critical this is for them. It takes time, it's very complex, but we see ourselves as the people that are going to help them make this exercise a lot less complex. We show them that it doesn't need to be difficult. We usually look at the KPIs that they have been measuring already, and we show them another way of telling the stories that they are not telling already. And we also show them examples of startups that have been telling consistently their impact stories. And for that reason, engagement with the communities that they've been involved with have been increasing. And one of the things, also one of the arguments that we use with them is that it's like with us at Maze, it's really preferable for you to be proactive and be prepared for the future rather than to wait and see what happens. But most important of all is the fact that impact investment space is growing, and so is impact washing. And the fact that you're transparent and you're compliant with your impact strategy is really what makes the difference. So to show that alignment between the startups and their potential investors, shareholders, sponsors, is really a differentiating factor, and it's where it's the point that we stress the most. And I'm going to show you two examples of startups that represent two different personas. So the first of one is On. I don't know if you heard of them. It's one of our investors. We call them the case study because they were born this way. It's a menstrual cycle brand that is focused on reshaping the way people experience their entire cycles through period products, but also more. They were born impact driven. Their founders are completely impact focused. And they, since the very beginning, since there were two of them, they really take the time and resources to tell their impact and to measure the impact of their business. And this made them build a community, even in countries where people cannot purchase their products, of fans of their mission. And people are completely faithful to their brand values and what they've been building. And that has been leading them to constantly attract impact investment, to attract follow-on rounds with previous investors, including us. And it's really a proof of their commitment and a show of how engaged they are with the mission that they've decided for themselves. And looking at the EVPA's wheel, we see ourselves very focused on this step 4 of helping them to verify the impact that they've been building. And it's a more back office work because they've been very strong on this since the beginning, but it's our shy attempt of being relevant to them because they are pretty amazing in this aspect as well. And a second example is a different type of persona. It's Sensefinity, is the ones that I call them, I see the value now. So Sensefinity, they joined our acceleration program, the last edition of it. and they claimed that they wanted to fight world hunger through the digitalization of the supply chain, which was a pretty huge claim to make. And they do it by installing sensors inside shipment containers that most of all, they transport food. And these sensors are aware of temperature, humidity, and other conditions. And every time that there is a big shift, they highlight this shift to the people that are in charge of it. And they can even define routes. For example, if there is a heat wave and the products are getting bad faster than expected, they can be delivered to a closer location rather than one that it's further, and with the risk of a lot of food going to waste. So one of the things that we have identified when we started working with them is that their impact claim could not be proved. And that was very clear on their pitch. It was so far away that every time that they approached impact investors, people couldn't relate to. And that happened because most of all, they were focused in terms of investors in IoT and blockchain. So there wasn't the need for them to be proactive in this type of messaging. And after participating in the program, they started to see impact investing seen as an opportunity for them. So what we have done with them was not to increase the amount of work that they are doing, but really to reshape the story that they tell by looking at the KPIs that they already measure. So they are super strong on that, and to foster better conversations within the impact investment space. And that has led them to almost closing a round with the Portuguese Social Innovation Fund. And again, the fourth step of the EVPAs will on most importantly, to value the impact of what they are doing and to reshape the story of what they are already creating. And I think that the third persona here that I haven't included for you, but I know that everyone already knows them, is the ones that do not believe that this is something useful for them. So we still have startups that go through our programs, and we cannot influence towards not the importance of all of this, but to really transform that into action, to start measuring what they do, to report that to their investors. But I believe we've made peace with that and understood where is our angle of influence to everyone that we work with. And that made me to one of the conclusions that we had as a team while preparing for this presentation, and that I wanted to share with you, was to really look at our impact measurement and management approach, and to understand for each type of product that we have, the level of influence that we are having, and if we are in peace with that or not. And for the acceleration, we really believe that the programs are so stretched in terms of the capacity of the teams and the timeline restrictions, the high intensity, and the startups that we encounter are always so short on resources that it's really hard to tell their impact stories in a way that we know for sure that in 6 months from now it's not a completely different story. So it's hard to convince them. It's a hard work, but we see ourselves as really an influence towards making impact as a priority, which for some of the startups that are applying to an impact accelerator, it's not. So it's a surprise for us when we get them. It's a high-level support, and it's mostly focused on simplifying what this could be, what this could represent to them. So most of the times we are not looking for new KPIs. We are looking for everything that it's already being measured, and to build a better storyline with that. For the fund is a completely different story, right? Because we, both startups and the fund itself, we are accountable, the fund to our investors and the startups to the fund, about everything that we do. So our strategy, our impact strategy is really part of our impact thesis, and it's the core of everything that we do. Is how we minimize the risks, how we ensure that the impact missions are being updated, are compliant, and are well communicated. And our level of interference here is much higher because of that, basically. And when looking at EVPA's will, we believe that through the work that we do with the public sector is where we have full control of the process from the start till the beginning, because we really having a strong strategy in terms of that is really the only way to have the project going. I don't know if most of you are familiar with the financial instrument of social impact bonds, but when we build one from scratch, what we have to understand is the problem that we are trying to solve, learn everything that we need to learn about that problem. How can we improve how can we improve the situation that we are trying to solve? For example, now we are doing a pilot on diabetes prevention. And we've been through the whole process. We are piloting with 6 different people. We've defined our KPIs. We've defined the type of impact that we want to create. And now we are measuring it. So it's really a deep interference in all the spaces that we are considering for this. And it's really, at Maze, I showed you 4 different areas. Now I'm showing you 3 different products, but we are moving from a vertical perspective to a more toolbox approach, where we know that we have the capacities and the competences in-house to measure and manage the impact of all the stakeholders that we work with. It's really up to understand the type of situation, the type of involvement and interference that we can have, and to attract or to grab the type of tools that we need to each type of stakeholder. So for the accelerator, we try to keep it very simple. We don't use any software or any technology tool. What we do is we build for every edition an impact sheet that we share with each startup. In the first edition, we were very naive. We delivered it to them like a template and said, please fill it in. No one filled it in by the end of the deadline. So after that first attempt in the next editions, we do it differently. So we make a first approach. We give our understanding, knowing what we know about the business, of what would their impact management sheet would look like, and then they just evaluate it and make their changes. So when I'm going to share the slides, by the end of it, I have an example of one of the impact sheets, so you can have it as an example and use it as if you prefer. But it's the only tool at the moment that we have.
So this is at the core of the LIAISE project. You know that we are organizing this webinar within this Better Incubation project that is funded by European Commission, and this is really a project focusing on both supporting social enterprises and codifying instruments to better support underrepresented entrepreneurs. And we have identified some groups such as migrants, women, youth, seniors, as well as people with disabilities, for example, to become themselves entrepreneurs. So is this a target group you have in your accelerator or fund, for example?
To be very honest, it's not something that we actively look for, but it's something that we make sure that the final cohort is always diverse. Diverse in terms of gender, but also diverse in terms of age representation and nationalities. And it was something that in the first edition was harder to get because we had less applicants, but in the future editions was much easier to find the right balance between everyone. But it's really it's not the core of what we do, and we don't have any specific approach to them. The only concern that we have is that the final cohort represents the applications that we've been getting.
Questions, then please feel free to send them to us. Also, Angela told me now if there are any questions left, if you want to get in touch with her, please let us know and we will put you in touch. With this, I would like to thank you once again for your participation, for being here with us today, and hope to see you in one of the upcoming modules again. So have a nice day and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.